finally, when we want to get to the algebraic representation, we want to get away from the picture, and we just want to write some symbols on the page that represent the relationship. And when we write these symbols, we'll have written the algebraic formulation, the algebraic communication. So everything starts out the way we had it before, G, E of t. G is a function of t operated on by the exam function. And over here is going to go whatever mathematical function will mimic these pictures that we had drawn here, So the idea is to try to come up with an algebraic function, a mathematical function that imitates these things that we think, pictures that we think represent the relationship. So we could start off with something simple. For example, we could start off with a t plus b, which would represent a linear function. In other words, my picture looks like this. Okay? My grade goes up linearly with the time that I put in. Now these two guys right here are referred to as parameters. And as we change the values of a and b and then fix them, we get different lines, right? Remember, the b was the intercept, or the initial value. So if we want to, for example, change what grade you get when you don't study at all, we change b. If we want to change the grade that you get for the effort that you put in, then we change a. In other words, if this test is really hard, you got to put in a lot of effort to get your grade up, so that means a low slope. If the test is really easy, then we have a high slope, which refers to putting in a little bit of effort to get a much better grade. So it could have been a linear relationship, except I didn't draw any pictures that looked like just plain old lines on here. So we're guessing that maybe it's not. Maybe it's something more complicated. Well, it turns out that the logistic equation, or the logistic function, is a mathematical function that makes pictures like this. And what does it look like? Well, it looks like this. Let's write it back up in here. And it's kind of complicated, so you may not understand this all, but it's not critical that you do. So it looks quite complicated, a lot more complicated than this simple linear function. It involves things, these two exponentials here, a lot of information and ideas that may not be available to you right now, especially if you're just beginning pre-calculus. You won't necessarily know this. Although in intermediate algebra you might have seen exponentials before, but never put together in this way. And it turns out that a and b, the two parameters, just like these two parameters, have a significance. A tells you the upper limit of your score. So for example, in this case, A we would let be 100, and B represents the beginning value. So for example, if I put 30 in here, then what I'm saying is I want B to be 30, which means that's the starting score. If I don't study at all, this is the maximum score I could get, 100. So then C determines which shape. Remember I told you if a test was hard, it might be long and drawn out. So that's a small c. If the test is easy, you go up very quickly to the maximum score, and that is a big C, a relatively big C. So C affects the shape of the curve there. And I have another video after this one that uses the computer to help you explore this thing called the logistic function. Okay? So every relationship that you could choose is different. When we want to simplify relationships, we try to make them behave like a linear one because we're familiar with this and it's easy. When we want to do a better job of understanding the relationship, we might put something more complicated in, like the logistic equation.